This week on The Road to Rock, none other than legendary Wasp guitarist Douglas Blair will join us to talk about the upcoming Wasp 40th anniversary tour, getting back on stage after 2.5 years of an absence for Wasp, and also his side project, Signal to Noise. It's all coming up right here on The Road to Rock. Get ready.
Hi, everyone. This is Eric Martin, the lead singer for the band Mr. Big, and you are on The Road to Rock with Clint Schweitzer.
Thank you so much, man. I love talking about the things that I love, Clint, and for you to allow me to do it with you. God bless you. God bless the Heartland. God bless America.
You are now on The Road to Rock. It's not just a podcast. It's an unabashed celebration of rock's living legends. And now, please welcome your host, the master of your rock and roll road trip, leading you down the highway to hell, Clint Schweitzer.
And welcome to On the Road to Rock. I'm your host, Clint Schweitzer, and I have such a tremendous guest joining me this week. It's releasing a little late because I'm doing the interview a little late in the evening, so if you guys are getting this at around 9 or 10 p.m. Central Time, that's because I just got done doing the interview and getting it up. So usually I do podcasts airs on Friday, of course, here on The Road to Rock. And I was able to work out this interview with none other than Wasp guitarist Doug Blair. And this was the time that we could make this work here on a Friday night. So I thought, hey, why not make it this week's podcast, get it out as soon as possible, and roll with it because this is a very special interview. And of course, Wasp, guys, is hitting the road in America for the first time in a decade here coming up this fall. The tour in America, anyway, starts in late October in Las Vegas. And there are several dates. Of course, there was a European tour that was scheduled this spring that's had to be postponed to 2023. But Wasp does have a few dates this spring that will take place, I think, mostly in Sweden. So we're going to talk to Doug about kind of the resurrection of Wasp in America, why now is the time to return. And I think the appetite for Wasp is huge, as evidenced by the ticket sales on this tour. If you go to the website, waspnation.com, you can see all the tour dates. I will be catching the show November 6th at the Tulsa Theater in Tulsa, Oklahoma. There have been dates that have already sold out. So make sure you go get your tickets now. This is going to be an event not to be missed. For a couple of the shows, the ones in Texas and Oklahoma, I believe, Michael Schenker will be joining the tour along with Armored Saint, and Armored Saint will be there for the entirety of the tour. So what a bill, what an event it's going to be. Of course, those old school fans, I'm only 38, so I don't remember this because I was only 1 year old. But in the research I've done since, I've heard tale of this infamous Wasp Metallica Armored Saint tour that took place in 1985 with Wasp headlining these shows. Wasp is one of my all-time favorite bands, definitely in my top 5, and to be able to see them for the first time since 2004, I saw them on the Neon God tour at the Blue Note in Columbia, Missouri. So to be able to go down to Tulsa, check this out in the fall, I already am just waiting with anticipation for this, as a lot of Wasp fans are, to be able to see this band for the first time. I mean, they haven't been on stage, I think, since December of 2021. So we're going to talk to Doug about that. The side project, he released a single from his band Signal to Noise, which is a power duo made up of him and Tony Toxie London from Santa Cruz, and it is absolutely just searing and emotional. This music is tremendous, and the single, which is it's called Generica, and they did that single just to raise money for mental health awareness, which is tremendous. Doug's just a great guy, formerly of the East Coast from Connecticut, now lives overseas in Finland. I'm going to talk to him about that dynamic. Why the move? Why did it happen? And then, of course, what it's been like. He's been now with Wasp for the last 18 years. He joined back in 2004, 2005. The first album he did was called Dominator, and I absolutely love that album. Wasp has been so prolific in their post, 80s and 90s output. In the 2000s alone, you think about Unholy Terror back in 2000 or 2001, I think. El Dorado. They've had some just tremendous albums. Dominator, Babylon, and Golgotha. Those are the 3 that Doug has been on with Wasp. We're going to talk about, what it's like working with Blackie Lawless. You hear all this tales, and of course, former guitarist Chris Holmes now battling throat cancer. So there's a lot to get into with Mr. Doug Blair, and we can't thank him enough for his time. We're going to go to that interview here in just a moment, of course. But we want to thank everyone for being a part of the show. As always, go to our website, roadtorockpodcast.com. That's where you can check out all the interviews, the podcasts, the articles. Everything that we've done is archived there, roadtorockpodcast.com, and you can search On the Road to Rock. Catch us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. It's all there, all for you. We don't have a TikTok yet. People are demanding it. If you have a request, you have something you want to talk about, just want to shoot the crap, email me, roadtorockpodcast@gmail.com. So without further ado, I want to take you to this week's interview that I just conducted moments ago with my good friend Doug Blair from W.A.S.P. It's great to have you again, guys. You are on the Road to Rock with Clint Schweitzer. Our special guest this week is none other than W.A.S.P. guitarist Douglas Blair, but we're going to talk about a lot more than just that. It is so great to have you on the show. What pray tell are you doing out here in California? Because I know you live abroad. You live overseas in Finland, I believe. What are you doing in the States? What's going on for you right now, man?
Well, I was over here because we had been planning rehearsals for a spring run that would have started on March 14th and went till the end of May.
Yes.
And that was up in the air and on the fence for a long time because the ticket sales were great when it was first announced and it was going pretty smooth. And then the Omicron hit and everything just went flat. And especially the countries that the tour goes through, they're tending to be more the European style of closing everything down, which has already happened twice since I was in Finland. They closed down, I can't remember when, but they closed everything down 2 different times. And that's just Finland. A lot of the countries did, whatever they did was their style. They did it their way. And this time we were hoping that things would open up in time, and things have opened up, but not in time to get the ticket sales up and to really be certain that there wouldn't be any hangups on the borders between, there's still a lot of inconsistencies between which countries require what type of testing or vaccinations or whatever. And now, of course, we have the new bomb dropping from,
yes,
from the sky. So in a weird way, we were bummed out that the thing had to get postponed till next year again. But in a weird way, we would have been pretty much stuck, in this right at the wrong time. So it's funny how things work. And no matter what, not to go down that rabbit hole, but if this thing doesn't get sorted out quickly, then, it'll be a while before anybody's touring. I would go on record as saying that. So the tour was supposed to start. We were scheduled to be in the big room at Third Encore, which is a great facility that we have used for years and years. We were scheduled to be in there today, as a matter of fact. I think we were supposed to start today and go for 5 days or so, and then have a day to get ready, and then fly over and have a day to get ready over there. And then we would have been into production rehearsals in Germany, I believe, for a few days, maybe 4 or 5 days. And that would lead up to the first show on the 14th. So everything was, written, penciled in, put it that way. It was penciled in.
That's all you can do these days, right? Pencil it in. You can't use a permanent marker.
You're all done. So yeah, we had the rehearsal scheduled for a long time at the facility. We had the other stuff all in place, and everybody was kind of waiting and watching. And then they, really had to make the decision to move everything a year. And I got to really hand it to the promoters and the guys, on our business team for the band that, this is like a nightmare. This is a nightmare for the 3rd time. Last time we did have a fall tour for 2020, and that just got completely shelved. So that was bad enough. But to move all of those shows one by one or in groups and actually plan it for next year must be like Tetris times 1,000, I would say. And they did it. They were able to move all the shows before announcing that the whole thing needed to be postponed. And that, and that's an unbelievable amount of work, and not to be able to talk to anybody about it, not to be able to tell anybody, because if one person says, oh yeah, it's getting postponed, and it leaks, then all the fans, everybody's wondering what's going on. So they really had to keep it all under wraps and get it all organized before making the announcement. So it's been a frustrating time, and I've just been here kind of waiting. I haven't done any of the work. Everybody else did all the hard lifting and the hard work, and I've been out here because I thought we may be able to get into, rehearsals. And we have been doing some, preliminary hanging out, meeting, and playing a little bit with the guys because I live very far away. So it's been great to be here and hang out with Achilles, the drummer, and Mike, the bass player, and get in a room and blast through some songs and stuff. And we just knew that, it probably was going to get postponed, but we still just had to, keep planning for the best and, hoping for the best and planning for the worst. So that's why I've been here. I'm flying out on Monday, which is exactly the day we would have flown out as a band.
Wow.
So I'm flying out alone. Going to be a little bit lonely down at the, at the airport. I'm going to be waiting for everybody to show up. Hey, where are you guys? What the hell? You're fucking late. So, yeah. So I'm going to be down there on my own, flying to Munich and then up to Sweden, and then we will reconvene in the summer for some festivals that have thankfully been put on the calendar to keep us busy.
Yes, that looks awesome, by the way, and one of which you are playing with Ace Frehley in the Struts, and I'm a huge fan of the Struts. I mean, don't even get me started on Ace Frehley. I just saw him open for Alice Cooper just this fall. Still tremendous. His band is awesome, and I know you're a big Kiss fan, right, growing up, so this is going to be cool. I believe you said I was just going to ask you during this interview what your first concert was, but I think you posted earlier that one of your first was Kiss and Rush there on the East Coast, right? What year was that, and how? Yeah, that's what year was that, and when? That was in Connecticut or Massachusetts? Do you remember?
That was in Springfield, Massachusetts, but I lived in Manchester, Connecticut. I grew up in Manchester around Hartford, and it's only about 20 miles up to Springfield. So we were in a really great place for concerts. We had the Hartford Civic Center, where I saw Van Halen and Journey and everybody, and then we had the Springfield Civic Center, which was a little bit smaller, and I got to see a lot of great shows there. Then we had the New Haven Coliseum, and I went down there and saw Van Halen open for Black Sabbath in 1978, the same year that I got to see Kiss. So what's ironic is both Rush and Kiss came out with their live records pretty much the same time, 1976. Kiss came out with Alive, and Rush came out with All the World's a Stage. And we had heard of Kiss because they were, on the cover of Newsweek, and my big sister went to see him in 1976, and everybody knew what was going on. But Rush was a mystery, and we saw the cover of the record of All the World's a Stage, me and my friends. We saw the cover, and we said, we're buying this fucking record. So we bought it, and we got hooked on Rush as well. So Rush was coming through and touring, and I got to see them in the same place in 1978 on the Hemispheres tour, which was absolutely amazing. They had a giant video screen that was wider than the stage, and they played all kinds of great stuff while they played. And then we saw Kiss there, which was unbelievable because they had the platforms that went up in the air. So Ace went up in the air, and Gene went up in the air, and Paul went up in the air. And it's not a very big Coliseum. I think about 12,000 people. So it really was amazing. They brought all that in there, and we got to see it. I was 15 years old. I was 15 years old seeing Rush, and 15 years old seeing Van Halen open for Black Sabbath in 1978 in the New Haven Coliseum. So that was a great year for seeing those three, bands that really kind of molded me and a lot of our friends. We had Aerosmith and other bands, of course, but Kiss and Rush and Van Halen and Black Sabbath kind of really, and they were there. We could, even as 15-year-olds, we could either get a ride to the concert, or I think we could drive at 17, but I didn't drive to those concerts. I think somebody took me. So that was cool that I saw. I'm not a big, I'm not up on the Struts, but a lot of my friends love them and tell me they're great. So I'm looking forward to getting to know them before we get to play with them. But the thing about Ace is not only is Ace a close and very old friend of Blackie, of course, but his drummer, Matt, I have played with him since about 1990, maybe 89 or 90. Matt was in a band that I had for a long time previous to joining W.A.S.P called Run 21. And Matt was a drummer that kind of came along after Stet Howland, who was the one who kind of got into W.A.S.P first with Blackie.
Yep.
Stet Howland was the original drummer when I played with Run 21, since I was Run 21 played its first show about 2 months after W.A.S.P played its first show. We both had our first shows in the fall of 1982, our debut shows. So when me and Stet were in W.A.S.P doing the Crimson Idol tour in the fall of 1992, Blackie was saying, this is the 10-year anniversary of the band. And me and Stet were looking at each other and going, yeah, it's the 10-year anniversary of our band too. So, but we were in another band. You know, we were playing together in his band. So it was kind of ironic, but yeah, we both started out around the same time. They were in LA, of course, and took a vastly different route that we did. But we ended up playing, about 1,500 shows with Run 21 around the East Coast. And a lot of my connections that kind of got me to where I'm here all started back then. Not only Stet, but guys like Nuna from Extreme and Matt, who plays with a lot of, has played with a lot of people now. And a lot of our friends from New England ended up doing pretty well and getting into different bands. So it's amazing to look at Fates Warning and Chris and Pelletieri and Jimmy Bell, who came in second to Zakk Wylde. And then you go to Springfield and you have Stained, came from Springfield. You have Tony McAlpine, came from Springfield. All the Boston bands, Extreme and those guys. So it was really fertile. It was really, really fertile. And looking back on it now, it's interesting because even Blackie will say to me, damn, there's a lot of guys from the East Coast came out and got, ended up being in the business one way or another. And he was even from Staten Island. But I never actually moved out here. I've only come out here to work with the band and rehearse and record and visit and stuff. And this trip might be my longest trip I've ever come on my own and hanging out. And because we did not end up being able to rehearse or do much, it still has been a really great time to skip the whole winter, put it that way.
Absolutely. No doubt about it. And, you think about the timing of things and, for W.A.S.P, I think it's been, by my count, now math isn't my strong point, Doug, but 27 months since W.A.S.P last took the stage, with the pending dates coming up here. And then of course we'll get into this 40th anniversary of W.A.S.P. It is here and it's coming to America. 10 years since you've been to America. When it comes to the band, I mean, you and Mike have been in this band for so long. He's been in since I think 1995, you for the last 18 years. What's the feeling right now? Are you chomping at the bit? Is it anxiety? Is it excitement? Is it just, let's get this going? What are the feelings as this tour gets postponed? You've got some dates on the books, but this America thing, this has been in the works for a while. That's what everyone's talking about. There's shows that are sold out already on this America tour. I'll be at the show in Tulsa. Can't wait to see you there. Talk about how the excitement of that and just kind of what you guys are feeling after 27 months of being off.
Well, you just touched on about 10 different emotions, and I'll try to remember which ones to go for. But just to go back, first of all, we were really lucky to have our last two shows right before this shit hits. Yeah, our last two or three shows were down in South America in early December of 2019. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times we would never play separate shows like that late in the year. If we tour, we would usually tour until maybe a week or two before Christmas, or not even that late, just to give everybody time to kind of chill out and be ready for the holidays. So actually it was really serendipitous to end up with those Southern festivals, and they were cool. They were Knot Fests with Slipknot and with Behemoth, Behemoth, and a lot of really great bands were down there with us. And then we played a single show on our own in Sao Paulo, Brazil. That was the very last show, and that was with Accept. And what was noteworthy about that show is that is kind of Achilles' hometown and his hometown fans were all there, and he brought his giant drum set, and that was like a big homecoming show for Achilles to get to play down in Brazil. And that was our last show. And little did we know that we wouldn't be able to play for this long. Nobody knew. So I'm sure, you know, I'm not telling anything you haven't heard before that you've heard from other bands that have been waiting and planning tours and having them canceled over and over again. We had festivals in the summertime in Europe that were canceled. We had the European Headless tour was fall of 2020, and that got canned out. So I've had other smaller tours that I do on my own, kind of up around Finland and Sweden. Those have been canned. So the first time it really nails you, it really depresses you, it really knocks you down. But after a while, you look at the whole sphere of things and realize, you know, it's just part of life. And we've been really lucky in the past that shit like this has never really happened. And now we're on the, you know, the tipping point of another iceberg that really, I hope, does not start affecting or continue to affect touring in the next few years. I really hope that it, you know, that it subsides. But as far as the other things you were touching upon, you know, the band has had kind of ebbs and kind of waves, and what's happened here in the States with, you know, the particular genre of metal and what a lot of the other bands that W.A.S.P has been kind of lumped in with and how they've handled their careers. I think that's led to sort of a ebb and sort of a low point in rock and metal in the States during the 2000s and even into the early 2010s. And it seems like there's been a nice resurgence with all the great metal cruises and the rooms. And there seem to be more rooms, and the bands are reuniting, and they're getting out on tour. That's been a nice thing to watch happen again. The last time W.A.S.P played in the States was 2013 at the M3 Festival. And I remember Blackie saying to us in the dressing room, saying to us, take a good look around. Take a good look around. Because it's probably going to be a while before we come back here again. We had been feeling in the last, you know, few tours we tried to do in the 2010, 2011. I don't recall exactly what years they were, but the venues and the way the venues treated the bands and the dilemmas that we got stuck in the last few times that we were out, you know, that same sentiment had been expressed a few times that, you know, take a good look around. I don't know if we're going to be back here for a while, because things had just changed, and it wasn't the environment that really was kind of conducive to bringing out a good show on the road, to bringing out a good road crew, to treating everybody well, to, you know, staying healthy and actually, you know, having a good environment out there when you're traveling long distances. The States have historically longer distances than touring in Europe. A good analogy of touring in Europe is like touring in New England. And to get used to growing up in New England and being able to do one-nighters kind of at any corner you want to try to drive to, not really one-nighters, but most of your drives between cities were a few hours. And the way that the scene used to be, it supported that. You could play in each one of the cities, and there wasn't much crossover. But the way the States are now and the way the markets are spread out, of course, you got to lose nights to get to the next show. You got to have, you know, a night off, and that's very expensive. And to compare that to Europe, where you can really kind of go as long as you want almost without taking a night off, you actually have to decide how many nights are we going to do this before we start endangering our health or whatever. So in Europe, the only time you really need to put in an extra day is if you're going from England down to, you know, maybe Spain, or if you're going from Germany all the way down to Greece or something. If the routing is good, then you really can get away with not many nights off for travel. You can have your nights off for rest and not have everybody traveling, but you're not stuck in that situation where you're driving from New Orleans to, you know, Phoenix for the next show, which you can't really do in one night, or from Phoenix up to, you know, I don't know, Chicago or somewhere, and you got to take that night off, and everybody has to, well, the drivers have to do it. They have to keep going. So I'm trying to think where I got back to. Oh, so yeah, the last few runs that we did here, you know, the attitude not only in our band, but in many other bands that were trying to do it from our genre and from our kind of graduating class, if you say that. You know, it was gradually smaller rooms and crappier environments and crappier situations, and luckily for the band in Europe, we have a great scenario over there and a very young following and a good turnover of younger fans. So there's always that to kind of focus on, and that's what we ended up doing, to the chagrin of the fans here in the States. But the other thing that came around, I think, and I can't speak for everything directly because it's not it's not my avenue of expertise, the business side, but sure. I think that there had been a dire lack of good agents, which would go along with the rooms being, harder to deal with and stuff like that. And I think now there are better agents, and we found a very good agent, and that's what has led to a great run being organized by them, and we're all really super looking forward to it. So it's going to be killer.
Oh, absolutely! Can't wait. And you guys are going to be out with Armored Saint, which is just tremendous. What a great band, and for a few shows, including the one I'll be at, Michael Schenker. This bill is tremendous. People are anticipating this. That I've talked to people that are just like already planning their whole weekend around this. Like around here, it's football season. Like no one cares. We want to get to this Wasp date, and that's very important. It's been 18 years. Right before you joined, I saw Wasp last in 2004. So you weren't even in the band yet. You've been in the band 18 years. What's kind of this ride, this journey meant to you? Because you're a working man's guitarist. You're seemingly never content. You're versatile. You play on things. You produce bands. You work with young bands. You do so much. For you personally, a guy growing up, going to see bands like Kiss on the East Coast, growing up in Connecticut, what has this journey in the last 18 years kind of meant for you personally as a musician and as just a rock fan? What's this been like for you working with Blackie for 18 years?
Well, I'll have to go back to the first time that I was able to work with the band in 1992, and that was directly from Stet Howland moving out to California, leaving Run 21. He left our band Run 21 to move here to California and work with an old friend of ours named Chris Impellitteri, who has been billed as the world's fastest guitarist. Chris was a guy on Shrapnel Records and came from Connecticut. He grew up in New London, Connecticut area, and actually wanted to be in Run 21 as well, way back in the day when I got the gig in 1982. But Chris ended up making a great career on his own and still is an amazing guitar player. And he called Stet up and said, "Do you want to come play in Japan?" So Stet couldn't turn that down. He moved out to California, played with Chris for a while, but then ended up hearing about Blackie looking for a drummer because of a dilemma with Frankie Benali at that particular time. I believe that Frankie had some personal dilemmas and needed to take some time off during the recording of Crimson Idol. And that's how Stet was able to get in and audition and end up playing on the record. And then he was in the band. And I remember him calling me and saying, man, just, be ready one day. The phone might ring. You never know. So sure enough, the phone rings. I'm teaching guitar lessons up in Springfield, Mass. And somebody comes and knocks on the door and says, your wife called. And she said Stet Howland called and they told her that you have a plane ticket to go to California tomorrow morning. And I'm like, oh my God. So sure enough, they had been auditioning guitar players, and apparently of all the guitar players in LA, they couldn't find anybody that kind of piqued their interest or even kind of, got in the ballpark. So Blackie had turned to Stet and said, "All right, Stet, you know everybody in this town," which he did because he parties and plays with everybody. He's one of those guys that everybody knows. So Blackie turned to Stet and said that to him, and Stet said, well, I know a guy, but he's in Connecticut. And Blackie said, so? Get him out here. So that's what happened. Even before I heard about it, they had already arranged for a plane ticket.
Incredible.
And I called him later. Yeah, I called him later that night, and they told me what songs to learn, and I ended up coming out and auditioning and stuff. So the beginning of this whole thing happened then. And the journey really begins then.
Yes.
As far as with the band, because I played the whole Crimson Idol tour. And then after that, Blackie had decided he wanted to kind of go solo and create a band called Lawless, which we were going to be a part of, me, myself, and Stet, and a bass player from Connecticut named Dave Chirico. But that was short-lived. Apparently, we kind of went back and waited, and we didn't really hear anything. And I moved on. I moved on from there and went back to working with Run 21 and continuing building guitars and doing different stuff. So when I heard that Blackie had reformed W.A.S.P. With Chris Holmes, I wasn't that surprised. I had hoped, it could have lasted longer, but it didn't. And here's the thing, is that the Crimson Idol really is still my favorite record, and a lot of people's favorite record.
Yes. Yeah, me too. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for many reasons. As far as loving Rush and loving Journey and Van Halen and all this stuff, the early W.A.S.P. stuff, I liked it. It kind of hit me like good Quiet Riot maybe, or something, some good Rat. But it didn't really get under my skin like the Crimson Idol did. When I went out to audition in 1992, I had no idea that they had a record that sounded like that. And when they gave me the first 3 songs to learn, one of them was The Idol, which of course has a lot of acoustic guitar. When I heard how much acoustic guitar was on there, with the Great Misconceptions of Me and with the Hold
Idol,
On to My Heart, and The Idol, I was like, this shit is great. Where did this come from? I'm like, damn. So my first, to step into that type of scenario with the band was really a godsend, because if I had stepped in at a different time during the band's career, if I had stepped in, for example, during KFD or I don't know, a different record, I don't know if I really would have latched into it, put it that way, if I would have locked into it. But to walk in and get to do the Crimson Idol record for, I think it was 64 shows all through Europe. We played all through the States. We did freaking Monsters of Rock. We did giant festivals. And we got to play that music. And we got to play Wild Child and Blind in Texas and all the other good stuff that we added to the set list. But that was really kind of I would use the word again, serendipitous entry into the band. It couldn't have been better. I mean, I was totally into 2112 by Rush and freaking, and Eddie Van Halen too, and other stuff that wasn't quite as prog, but to have that much to be challenged by, and Stet Howland is a monster drummer, and he was perfect for that gig and perfect for that tour. I was able to use a double neck guitar that I had developed only about a year before that audition, which has an acoustic neck on the top and electric neck on the bottom. And I developed it because my acoustic guitar that I had been using on a stand kept on being knocked over on stage and broken, because somebody would trip on the table and it would get knocked over, and I'd have a beautiful Ovation guitar in 2 pieces again. So finally I just made it, and it worked. And I think it was pretty elemental in getting me the audition, because I was able to play that acoustic stuff with a real acoustic guitar, whereas a lot of the other guys walking in for the audition would just plug their, they just turn the amp on a clean sound, put on some chorus, put a little delay, and they'd play the clean part, and it wouldn't sound as much like Hold On to My Heart playing it on a real acoustic guitar. So at any rate, the point I was trying to make is that after the Crimson Idol, the records that the band ended up going back with Chris and doing Eldorado and KFD and some of the other ones, those weren't really my cup of tea. And I had stayed in touch with Stet, who was still in the band. Stet stayed in the band with Chris Holmes and then with Daryl. Daryl came after Chris, and they did the Neon God records, and there's some great songs on those.
Yep.
But again, right out of the blue, I had a really successful teaching business. I was teaching like 40 kids a week at their houses and just rolling along. Right out of the blue, the phone rings again.
Oh,
and it's Mike Duda this time.
Oh, yep.
Well, actually, no, let me take that back. I heard that Daryl left. I heard that Daryl had left the band. Somebody wrote to me and said, "Hey, did you hear Daryl left?" And what I did is I wrote to Mike and I said, "So what's going on?" And that's when Mike got a hold of me and told me that Stet had also left. So Stet wasn't in the band. Daryl was gone. They had a guitar player, and they said, "Thanks, we're all set. You know, if anything happens, we'll give you a call." And I, said, "Yeah, if anything happens, I could cover for a few weeks or something. It would be great. Let me know if you need me." And I kind of forgot about it. But then again, the phone rang.
Oh, as always.
And their guitar player wasn't working out. So in 2006, same thing happened. I jumped in the plane, got out there for a short tour, which ended up till this day. And the reason I want to mention it in context with the Crimson Idol is that I didn't know they were working on what became Dominator. I had no idea what, if the direction would have changed or if it would have been anything different than Neon God. But when I heard the tracks to Dominator, when I heard Crazy and Heaven's Hung in Black and Take Me Up, I was like, holy shit.
Great.
To me, it was night and day from the Neon God. And I got to go in and do leads on that whole record. And again, I hadn't even been playing lead guitar that much, and that's a different story. We'll talk about that later.
Mm-hmm.
But I had not been playing lead guitar with a band for quite a while. And here comes the call, "Hey, come out and cover for, we don't have anybody. Can you come out and cover and do a short U.S. run up and down the West Coast?" We did that. It was fun. I think I got to tell you this. We had 1 or 2 days rehearsal for that. And it didn't matter because I remembered all the songs. They were so deep in my blood. It would never go away. I could have went and done that gig with no rehearsal, except for the new songs that we may not have played back in the 90s. But anyway, The point is that when I heard the tracks and Blackie said, "Do you want to, play some leads on these?" I was like, I couldn't believe how good they were. And I couldn't believe how they fit exactly what I would really imagine as the best version of the music underneath Blackie's voice, put it that way. So when I heard Heaven's Hung and I heard those other ones, I'm like, geez, this is really a step up. What happened? What happened? And I don't know what happened. Whatever happened between the Neon God and Dominator, I think other people noticed too, because I think since Dominator, there's been a real shift and a definite elevation in where the band has been able to go. And that was Babylon, and that was Golgotha, and even Re-Idolized too. So I've been really, really proud to be part of those. And it was just a weird serendipitous kind of move out of nowhere in 2006 that, they need me to come play a little bit. So when you talk about the journey,
that's a journey.
Yep. It's been a short stint. It's been like a tease in 1992, almost a tease. And I kind of always knew maybe something would happen, but I didn't think about it that much. I didn't really keep tabs. And then at the right time, for whatever reason, really at the right time for everybody, it seems, it all came together in 2006 again. And Mike Dupke is a really, really big part of that equation. His
Great
swing,
friend, yes.
the way he swings and the way he hits was totally. I'm trying to think of the right word, pertinent for what those records ended up sounding like. And he has played on all four. He's played on all four of the ones that I've played on, even though he's not touring with us anymore.
Yeah, he's
but
great.
his swing and his feel locks in just right. And Mike Duda and Mike W.A.S.P are like a machine. They're like a perfect machine. And the way that Blackie's voice has evolved, I would say, from these last four records, my lead style is perfectly suited for that. And it's just really kind of by chance. I didn't try. I haven't been listening to their stuff throughout the 2000s. I can safely say I haven't even heard all of the Hell Dorado or all of Kill Fuck Die or all of the other ones. I know they're there, and it's sort of like someday I'll really discover them at my right time. But it kind of seems like I was meant to slide in for Dominator, and here we are.
Oh, and the tremendous albums, Dominator, Babylon, Golgotha, what a 3-album run. And I don't want to get off too much on a tangent here, but I have to mention this because you talked about filling in on the Crimson Idol tour. So we have to talk about, Doug, in the 8 years that I've been doing this show, I've lost control, my friend, of one interview and one interview only. And by lost control, meaning I had no control over the interview. It just went where it went, and it became kind of an internet sensation. Yes, you guessed it. That was with your former bandmate there on that Crimson Idol tour, Johnny Rod. What does that? What when you hear that name, just what comes to mind? Because to me, one word, it's energy, and he certainly has plenty of that to this day. And I love the guy, but I just lost control of the interview, and I never got it back.
Well,
as you can imagine, right?
That sums it up. My first impression of Johnny when someone mentions his name is his eyes almost popping out of his head.
Yeah, right?
And then
I love it.
Right, and close behind is just the smile. The smile and the pat on the back. It was great touring with him. I didn't really get to know him super close because everything was pretty rushed. When I got in for the Crimson Idol tour right at the very, I think 2 weeks before the first show. They were kind of, they were cramming for that first show, and I slid right in there, and it was just a roller coaster ride the whole way through.
Sure.
Now, what happened with Johnny at the end of the tour, personally, between him and the other guys, I had nothing to do with, and I didn't know much about, and I didn't get in between. So unfortunately, I haven't seen Johnny in a long time, but my experience with him on the Crimson Idol tour was great. He always had a great energy and just kicked ass every night. And we were just trying to keep up with him all the time. So
exactly.
I'm not surprised whatsoever that he would, take the interview and just you guys could sit back and listen for a few hours.
Well, yeah, it was a lot of that. It was tremendous. I actually love the guy, but Doug, I want to move in kind of a different direction because, you talk about, and this is all kind of clicking in and making sense now because you talk about your history with Rush and 2112 and seeing them in 1978. That's, of course, the Holy Triumvirate, Rush, a power trio. You have been involved with a power duo here called Signal to Noise. It's with drummer Toxie London, and your single Generica was released less than a year ago, back in I think May. And it is the proceeds, you use to raise awareness for mental illness, which is tremendous. That's Mental Awareness Month in America is in May. So I, as someone that's not a guitar person, because we have a lot of guitar players, people that listen to the show, describe what it is that you do in this band, because you play a bass guitar, a hybrid called Guitar Cross. It's an 8-string, and this thing is legendary. And Signal to Noise is awesome. That single is great, and I think you have another one on the horizon or close. So tell us about Signal to Noise. What's going on there?
All right, let me just try to summarize and not get too deep in the hole. I got to go back to Run 21. Run 21 was a power trio. It was myself, Stat Howland, and a guy named Jimmy Carter, who played bass and sang played bass guitar and sang. And he was a star in his own right. He was like our version of Blackie in a different band. We were a great power trio. We all sang lead and backup. When I joined the band, I had already brought some floor-mounted, like pedal floor synthesizer things. So we were able to actually play some Rush when we were playing some covers, and then we ditched all the covers and only played originals. But as a trio, we still always used some synthesizers. We played them with our hands here and there, but the bass player, Jimmy, would play them with his feet, a la Geddy Lee, with the MIDI floor pedals. And we were able to use those to sound more like a quartet. I was able to play melodic lead guitar because there could be a chord backing that had a minor and a major feel to it, not just a wide open, empty thing like Van Halen, for example. We were able to tackle that territory musically and compositionally because we could use these MIDI synthesizers to fill out the sound, and not only for a special effect way, but for actually a musical way that allowed me to be more of a melodic lead guitar player and not just, rely on licks and fast tricks and stuff just to do the flashy stuff. So where that factors into the story is one day I was listening to Filter. Now I love Filter from the 90s. And one thing they did is they had these guitar parts where each guitarist would just be chunking on one string, like on the bottom string, yang, 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 yang. And the other guitar player would be yang, 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 doing sort of a harmony, but it had this great thick sound. And it occurred to me, I want to do that. I want to do that in my trio. I'm going to give my bass player one guitar string on his bass. And I'm going to hook that guitar string up to a little Marshall, so that during one song or somewhere, we're going to be able to do that. He'll be able to press down the bass string and the guitar string at the same time. We'll have the bass note, I'll have my guitar note, and he'll have his guitar note. So that initial idea, which was made for Jimmy Carter, my bass player, expanded to the point where I found a 4-string bass and put actually 4 octave strings on it. So it became an 8-string bass. And I figured out a way to get those strings to go to the guitar amp by themselves. And Jimmy Carter, the bass player, had giant fingers, like an inch longer than mine. Each one of his fingers were an inch long. So he actually could play that thing great. And he played it, and we developed the concept a little bit, and we were going to try to fit it into Run 21 music and try to use it here and there. But then I got a great job at a guitar company up near Boston, and I moved away. I moved up to Boston. And it was a tough decision to make because I had to kind of leave Run 21 as it was. Matt Franklin was in the band at that point. Me and Jimmy Carter and Matt Franklin wrote probably 30 great songs together. We had kind of the best writing atmosphere that the band Run 21 had throughout its whole career. So with Matt and Jimmy, we wrote a lot of stuff, and even stuff that I'm still using now. So Matt had started fronting his own band called The Flames. He was singing and playing guitar, and Jimmy lived far away. So just a long story short, Run 21 kind of came to an end, and I moved up to Boston. And I got there, and I thought about this 8-string, and I was kind of bored with regular guitar, because even with my double neck, you can play acoustic, you can play electric, but still, guitar players have kind of covered all the territory. They did a long time ago, and a lot of the guitar stuff is regurgitated. It's like, as a guitarist, how do you keep breaking new ground? How do you keep moving forward somehow? I looked at this thing and said, fuck it, I'm gonna play that thing. So I started playing it, and I started writing songs on it, and I realized that a lot of the songs that I wrote on acoustic guitar could be transferred and played on the thing. A certain amount of Run 21 music could be adopted to it. And I started playing it, and I found a drummer up in Boston, and that was the beginning of what I had dubbed Signal to Noise. And I've been refining the thing. It started out with 4 guitar strings and 4 bass strings, and I realized I never play the top bass string. And if I ditch the top bass string, I get another guitar string. So that brought me to the state that it's been in for quite a while now. It has 5 guitar strings and 3 bass strings. So the bottom 3 strings are doubled guitar and bass string, and they are basically D, A, D, because I usually leave it in drop D tuning. So you have 2 octave pairs that are D, A, and D, and then I have a G and a B string that are only guitar. So what that means is I can have 5-string guitar parts, and then I can turn on either 1, 2, or 3 bass strings for whatever I need for the song. And it's really fun. I mean, I don't know how to explain it, but playing guitar as long as I have, and you kind of get bored, you think, well, gee, I'm going to go buy a wah-wah pedal. Or maybe, nowadays, nowadays guitar players have a lot more fun because of all the new digital amplifiers and digital effects.
Sure.
Now there is a lot more to play with, and there is actually a lot more room to expand in. But before that stuff came out, we were stuck with whatever normal amps you could get, whatever effects you could buy. So guitar players did kind of get stuck in a little rut where it's kind of like, well, where do we go next? What do we do? So that's why this thing is actually super fun, because you actually end up playing bass with the drummer and locking in as a bassist, but you're also able to play, guitar chords. We use open tunings. I can even play some lead on it because I still use the MIDI 4 pedals, the MIDI synth pedals. So I actually break out a couple of leads during the show. But I'm going to tell you right now, the best part about it, the absolute best part about it, regardless of what instrument I'm playing or whatever the technical details and doodads and blah, 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 the best part about it is being able to work with one other musician. And that's what, when I do clinics now and I talk about the power duo or whatever, it still boils down to when you're working as a musician, working with one other musician is one of the best ways to write music and really create music. And a lot of the best music that ever came out has come from really good writing partnerships. Elton John, and you can name them forever. You can name Eddie and Dave and Slash and Axl and Keith and Mick and John Paul, Jimmy Page and Robert Plant. Wherever you go, you're finding guys that can work together, Nuno and Gary Sharon, and create great music because they can bounce ideas off each other. When I'm playing with my drummer, Toxie, here in Finland, but I've done most of the work with Signal to Noise with a guy in Boston named John, the real crux of the matter, or the real point of the matter, is you have 2 people in the room. Whatever one person does, the other person can jump right on it. And before you know it, you've got a song. You don't have the 3rd or 4th opinion. You don't have other cooks in the kitchen. And things can happen very fast. And they can also it's like 2 people improvising together in a jazz scenario. The shit can go to the moon and back in a second. So that's, regardless of the nifty instrument I've invented or whatever, the best part is being able to really create songs with one other guy and have it sound like a wall. It sounds like a trio. It sounds like King's X. Sounds like Rush. It sounds like Zeppelin. But we're also trying to find a way to really sound like 2 people. Primus would be a good example. The way that the drummer and Les Claypool, when they start playing something, you're just like, fuck, wow. Or Neil Peart and Geddy Lee, same thing. Of course, Alex is there. Alex Lifeson, but Neil and Geddy, they just made this thing, and it's uncopyable. It's just so them. So that's where that thing ended up growing, and that's what I was doing in between being in W.A.S.P in 1992 and getting back in W.A.S.P in 2006. I really played this instrument from about 1998 straight up to when I got back into W.A.S.P. And it was really cool to come in to do the leads for Dominator, because I picked up my guitar and I went, man, I haven't played this thing in years. So what's cool is that the licks that came out for Dominator were really just what should have come out. They weren't a bunch of stuff I had been practicing. I hadn't been touring with other bands. I hadn't been working on my licks. I hadn't been listening to any other guitar players. It was really completely out of the blue. I would hear the song that those guys have been working on and just start playing. So it's kind of another ironic situation that, you know, is able to come back into the band with a really, really fresh approach from not even playing lead guitar with anybody for a while. I had been focusing completely on this guitar cross and on developing signal to noise. We had recorded maybe 40 songs by then, but we hadn't really been able to make any headway in the States. So then I go move to Europe, and that's where there's been much more opportunity for the two-piece project to kind of expand and kind of blossom a bit when W.A.S.P isn't doing anything. So it kind of worked out for the better.
What was the kind of genesis? What was the reason that you kind of wound up moving overseas? I mean, we know that there's been several American artists that have moved elsewhere. Marty Friedman, I think, lives in Japan. Our good friend Ryan Roxy lives in Sweden. I keep saying I'm going to go visit him, but then I watched the movie Midsummer and I decided not to. Just kidding. That's a great movie, though, if you haven't seen it. Chris Holmes from W.A.S.P lives, I think, in France. And of course, we just found out he has throat cancer, and we wish all the best to him. Huge fan of Chris. And there's other people that have done it. For you, what was sort of the reason? Because you have so many perspectives now. You have the perspective of the different socioeconomic, different diverse, musical styles that exist in Europe. And you have the growing up on the East Coast, playing with W.A.S.P. You have all these different perspectives, and that's probably made you a more well-rounded person, musician, all of that. So what led you to do this?
Well, thanks about all that. I'm going to be the big 6-0 next year. So
no one's counting.
Life is broken up into chapters, and I'm really fortunate
That's right.
to have been able to, have several different real distinct chapters. But putting that aside, I want to go right back to say, that I'm really hoping that Chris can beat this. He's a big guy. He's a strong dude. It's going to take a lot to, Stet also had some fight of his own, and he kicked it. And I'm really hoping, these guys are really strong guys, and I think it's going to take much more than that to knock him down. So we're all really, sending our best wishes to Chris. It's ironic because he went over with his wife, Sarah, right about the same time that I first started going over. And he went over to Finland first. He went to Finland and stayed in Finland for a while to see if Finland would be a place where, he could kind of get his solo band going the way that he has gotten it going. And I think that he's probably come across a lot of the same conclusions that I have, and he decided to move down to France and stay, in that area with his wife. But that said, the real the impetus for my move was the fact that the band has been growing consistently and evenly in popularity and kind of prestige and sort of legacy over there since I rejoined. And it's weird. We've been doing festivals over there since 2007. And we, to first see how the band was received in Europe compared to how it was received in the States was wild to see how much of a drastic difference there was. To go back to Chris for a second, I'll just say that even in this upcoming tour in 2022, there will still be people coming up to me and asking me where Chris is. And they'll be asking me, when did you get in the band? What happened to Chris? There will still be people asking me. There's nothing wrong with that. There's plenty of bands that I've lost touch with that I loved in the 80s or 90s, and I wouldn't know what lineup changes they've had or whatever. So that's the difference between America and Europe, is that, of course, W.A.S.P had a really big heyday in America, and most of the fans, of course, connect to that. And that has to do with Chris and the original lineups and the early guys. In Europe, it's been a bit different, and especially because of the resurgence of metal. And I wouldn't say resurgence. Their obsession with American rock and American metal never went away.
Right.
And Ryan Roxy would agree with me in saying that Stockholm is more Sunset Strip in the past 20 years than Sunset Strip is and has been. You know, Stockholm is still real, genuine Sunset Strip, and that's the mentality. That's the people are cool. The music that the bands over there make is not only retro, but it's also groundbreaking. They're pushing ahead, and luckily, and for some whatever reason, W.A.S.P has always been connected to that in the minds of the people in Europe, and that has to do with I think the way that the band first exploded in Europe back in the 80s with I Want to Be Somebody. That song in particular has a completely different meaning for Europeans than Americans. And, you know, it would take an hour to explain that, but some people might understand it automatically and understand what I'm talking about. It has to do with the difference in the societies and how kids grow up and the family unit and a lot of different aspects that the particular line, quote unquote, I want to be somebody, would connect that much differently or deeper. I heard that song when I was 15 or 16 and I liked it, but it didn't, I guess I already knew I could be somebody. Maybe that's the point I want to make. So back here in the States, we're idolizing Kiss and Van Halen and Def Leppard and Journey or whatever for their messages that they were singing about, which is, you know, for example, Van Halen partying on the beach in Southern California, or Journey being in love with your girl. Whatever those things were, and, you know, you can talk about Rush singing about 2112, whatever those things were the things that we were connecting with, whether it's Dark Side of the Moon by Pink Floyd, getting stoned and, you know, and thinking about what those lyrics meant or whatever. But in Sweden or Finland, you ask those guys about what I Want to Be Somebody meant to them when they were 15. And I'm amazed. I sit back and I just go, wow, can you tell me that story again? It meant really a different thing. And, you know, now that we're watching what's going on with the situation over in Ukraine, that may shed a little bit of light on what people can see in their future or in their real possibilities of their lives. You know, it's just different than here. That's all. So my point is that the band, not only based on that, but also the strength of the last 4 records, has been slowly building a new following. We have 18-year-olds, we have 16-year-olds, and they're not coming with their parents. Their parents are not bringing them. Of course, you go to England and in Germany, there's the old crew. There's the old the guys that were, you know, coming to see the band since the 80s, and they're standing there hoping that we'll play Animal or whatever. But in front of them and up in the front, there's the kids that look like they're on Sunset Strip in 1987. And even Blackie will come back and go, damn, I just had a flashback to the Troubadour in 1986 with those kids in the front. And it's true. And the reason why is because the society hasn't changed so much. And I think the young kids, which I had many students, I have many guitar students, and I also coach bands over there that are all that age. And they're connecting with I Want to Be Somebody the same way that the kids did back in the 80s when it first came out. We have 14-year-old kids with hair past their waists. And I'm practicing in one room in the facility where I operate over there. And I listen, I stop finishing the song I'm working on, and I hear some band of like 12 or 13-year-old kids, and they're playing Wild Child over in their room. And I go running through the door. I go running through the door down the hall, and I go find the door, and I open up the door. I'm like, who's playing Wild Child in here? And I open up the door, and it's these little kids barely taller than the cymbal stand. And they're playing Wild Child.
You're kidding.
Yeah, and I think they know that I'm in the band, but they're not doing it for me. They're doing it because they love the song. And then they play Cold Gin after that. And I'm like, dude, I played Cold Gin when I was 14. And I'm like, dude, you're playing it wrong. Here, play it this way. So my point is that they're not discovering their parents' record collections like the young people might do in other places. They're discovering the music, however, and it's connecting with them. So that's where the journey kind of took the band. And through the band working in Europe a lot more, I had seen guys like, what's his name in Annihilator? Jeff, the guitar player in Annihilator. He's from Canada, and he moved to England too. So he's always been doing clinics in Europe. He's always, doing Epiphone clinics. And I remember starting to think about doing clinics, and we made it up to Finland, and I asked somebody in Turku, Finland, I said, do you know anybody doing clinics around here? If any of the music stores ever have anybody doing clinics? I'd love to do clinics while we're out on tour. And the guy said to me, yes, but I need to tell you about a program that we have here. And the guy ended up being a guy named Mark Bertenyi, who is Hungarian, actually, and had moved up to Finland. And he had also turned out to have been the stage manager for our last 3 shows that we had played in Turku. So we were familiar with Mark, and everybody likes him. Mark hooked up Blackie to go to the dentist at one of the summer festivals and totally saved saved the show. And Mark's one of those guys like Stet. He knows everybody, and everybody loves him in town. And so he had turned out being the stage manager for 3 shows in a row. And the last show in Turku, I just said, I'm thinking about doing clinics. He said, well, check out our program. And that was the beginning of it. The program is called Rock Academy Finland. It's basically an academy where they have sort of a band contest to find bands to join every year. And they get like 5 or 6 bands to come in. They record singles for them. They make videos. They record records for some of them. And I started doing clinics with them and started coming over and getting more involved in it. And then I realized that I would be in a much better position to share all the shit I've done over the years with these kids over there. Guitar Center never had anybody do clinics. And, where I lived around New England, there wasn't that type of opportunity. And it just was an open door. So that was 2013. And in 2014, I moved over. But the band still worked a real lot through, all those years, all the way up to 2019. So it's not like I've been there nonstop. I haven't been there nonstop until the pandemic.
That's
Before that, we've been touring. I've been in Sweden a lot. I've been dating German women and married to a German woman. So
wow.
I've been
awesome.
in Germany a lot. So our whole, not only the band, but personally, I'd just been leaning towards Europe. And I think there was a point where I thought I'd really love to experience living over there one way or another. So when Mark said this, and I started looking into the program and getting more involved with everybody, it just made complete sense. And it really felt not much different than moving, say from Boston to, Nashville. It didn't seem like that big of a move. I had already moved away from Connecticut up to Boston and kind of started everything out on my own. And it was just another step like that. But it's been just amazing. And to go back to Ryan's over in Sweden.
Yep.
And there's a few other guys that have made the move. Michael Monroe has a guitar player named Bob Conti. I don't think he's moved to Europe, but he's always working with Michael in Finland. And, they're sprinkled around. The guitar player Volbeat is from New York. There's a lot of good European bands have gotten American guys to come over and work with them. So I'm not the only one, but there's not too many in Finland, actually. In Finland, we had Kiko Laureiro from Megadeth married a Finnish woman, and he's kind of bouncing between LA and Helsinki. But there's not too many Americans in Finland. There's many more over in Sweden.
And I think Tracy Guns lives in Denmark part-time, so he's kind of made the move over there. So I don't know. It's something that it's interesting, and I think it gives such a unique perspective, and for your life and for things that have happened and the way it's unfolded. What a great chapter for you. And I tell you, Doug, we got to do this. We're running short on time here. I've kept you too long as it is, but we got to hit our final 4 drum roll, which is 4 quick questions to kind of end things, and you give us what comes to mind. And again, I just got to thank you for giving us the time. This has been just tremendous. I got so much more to talk about. We'll have to do a part 2 as we get closer to maybe the W.A.S.P US tour this fall. So we got to make that happen, my friend, because it's just. With you, it's just not an hour isn't long enough. With most people, 20, 30 minutes is too long. With you, an hour isn't long enough. So consider yourself
just scratching the surface. But thank you very much. And I hope I didn't take it off too much like Johnny.
No, I'm going to have to send you that separately, because that was that's an interview that will never be forgotten. I've
had many conversations with Johnny like that. It's great.
And you're like, wait, what did we get anything? I don't know how anything would ever, you could either finish an entire record in one day or get nothing done and not know why you even did, we're around, that's just how it is with Johnny. And I love it. He's great. And I think he's doing some stuff with King Cobra now. He looks great. He lost 70 pounds. He looks great.
Awesome.
So I know he's got more hair than me. I'm 38. He's got more hair than I do. He still looks great. So for you, Doug.
I just got to tell you a quick Johnny Rod anecdote. When I was on the Crimson Idol tour, when we were doing sound check on the Crimson Idol tour, many times Blackie wouldn't join us, and he didn't need to, because Johnny's voice was almost identical to Blackie's, and Johnny would be able to test the lead vocal microphone, and we'd be able to do all the normal sound check stuff, and Blackie wouldn't have to always join us if he didn't feel like it. But what was cool is that with Johnny singing, we would do Hold On to My Heart. We would do a bunch of obscure stuff that we didn't get to play with the band, just because Johnny would sing it and I would sing backup with him, and Stet would sing a little bit, and it was really killer. We were a cool power trio.
That is awesome. And I love his voice, actually. So it's underrated. He did an acoustic a couple acoustic songs with Blackie around 92, around the Crimson Idol on MTV, that were awesome. Yeah. I think they did Hold On to My Heart and The Idol, and it's like, man, he's just got a great voice, and he's doing some new music, he's doing some stuff, and I'm glad to see it. That's a cool story. Okay, Doug, for final 4 drum roll, we're going to hit you with this 4 quick questions, and you give us whatever comes to mind. For question 1, we talked about some of your first concerts and growing up, but what was the first album that you remember buying with your own money, or that you stole? Either one.
I'm going to say, is it Unleashed in the East by Judas Priest?
Unleashed in the East, the 1980. Yeah. That was your first one that you bought?
Possibly. I think I got All the World's a Stage, maybe 77. So yeah. We got to go back to the first record. I'm going to say Peter Frampton. Frampton Comes Along, or Leonard Skinner, the Leonard Skinner live album, or the Thin Lizzy live album. Now that I really think about it, those might have been some of the first records I ever bought. So the Judas Priest would have come later. You're right.
Yeah. But any of those will definitely do. Okay, so I'm cheating here, Doug, because this is not necessarily a final 4 drum roll quick hitting type question, but you make it as quick as you can, or that you want, or whatever. But I guess try to make it a quick one. You're putting together a set for the 40th year, 40th anniversary of W.A.S.P. Haven't been to America since 2013. Blackie has alluded that this set's going to be pretty long. What kind of a set are you working on? Maybe give us just what you can. Length. He alluded that you're working on some deep cuts. I mean, what I guess I'll cut it short. What can you give us on the set coming up for 40th anniversary? What can you give us?
It's in the pre-production mode. It's in the research mode. It's in the A&R mode. It's in the R&D. It's in the R&D department. It's in the R&D department. The pieces are being molded on the 3D printers just for prototyping. We're prototyping. No, there's been a lot of discussion about what the kind of oddball extents it could go to. There's a rule that the band kind of sticks with, and that is every song needs to hold up to the other songs. And the only way you can really tell is to play them in full production mode. So we're going to work up a lot of different songs in rehearsal. We're going to see how they feel in kind of low-end rehearsal, what we call like garage rehearsal. Just kind of see if they feel good without microphones, without PA systems, without a lot of extra stuff. And if they do, and they continue to, then they come into the big rehearsal room, and we see how they feel loud, and we see how they feel compared to all the ones we've been playing along the way. I doubt there's going to be any glaring omissions of the mainstays of the kind of the cornerstone,
the classic, yeah,
the classics. But there's going to be time, and there's going to be a lot of room for trying to dig to some really good obscure ones that haven't been played, and figure out a way to play them and make them work. There's probably going to be some medleys being put together so that you can kind of squeeze in a little bit more more for the buck,
yes,
so that there's not, everything isn't stretched. So there's a lot of great material that's being, talked about and considered. And I think it's going to end up being a really, really fun set to undertake, because the band hasn't played, in the States in so long. We anticipate there's going to be people attending more than one show in a row. Mm-hmm. So we're going to work hard to try to have a kind of a shifting set, kind of a set that drifts a little bit and moves a little bit, so it's not exactly the same every single night. So when people are coming and seeing one show after another, they're not just, it's not a programmed, thing, just blah, blah. We're going to try to have a few oddballs that can be thrown in, taken out, and a few surprises here and there. And it's going to be really a great environment to go with. And, losing these shows are kind of a double-edged sword, because it does give more time to focus on the U.S. run. We do have a few festivals we've announced in Sweden.
Sure.
There may be more, and those will be a very good way to keep our kind of toes in the water and not to get too stale, to get out and do some quick blast out sets over the summer, and really then be able to look at, okay, what songs could work in this environment that we haven't played in a long time or haven't been played at all. So that's where it stands, and it's going to be great because the ticket sales are good. The anticipation is high. The reactions are really good. I'm still going to be called Chris a few times, but that's okay. I love it.
Take it as a compliment. I think Tommy Thayer still gets called Ace Frehley night after night, and has for 20 years. So it's take it as a compliment. Don't worry. The hardcores, people that know, they know. I'll be there. I'll know. That's what matters, right? Mm-hmm. So that's great info, by the way. That was way more than I was anticipating. I thought you might leave me hanging there. That was great. I appreciate that. Very much looking forward to that. So obviously living in Europe, we were all locked down at a certain point in time. Is there a show? Are you a television guy? Is there like a show or shows that you found on streaming on Netflix that you maybe wouldn't have watched, but you had all this time and you discovered something new, or anything like that? Any show or shows streaming that you found during kind of lockdown? Anything come to mind?
Well, I got hooked on Hana since I've been back here to the States, but when I've been in Europe, I actually took the other direction and went and finished a bunch of guitars that I hadn't finished before, and recorded a lot of leads, and kind of dug a little bit deeper into playing. Finland was locked down, but we actually had summer festivals both last summer and the summer before. The only difference is that international bands could not come because of the restrictions on the travel. Last summer, actually, Europe came from Sweden, but that was the only band that came over from abroad. But because the COVID situation in Finland never really reached a level of the kind of numbers that most other places had, they were actually able to have pretty large open air festivals, both the summer of 2020 and the summer of 2021. And Signal to Noise got to play a couple in the summer of 2020. And then W.A.S.P was scheduled to play one last summer. It didn't happen. But there still were a lot of, festival action. So to answer your question, we were locked down, but there still was a real lot going on compared to other countries. And I was lucky to be there for that. So I didn't end up kind of turning my attention towards the TV. Thankfully, I kind of tried to redirect it and really get consistent. I built a bunch of double necks in the 90s that were mothballed, and actually found quite a few players abroad that started to become interested in buying them. So I actually was able to dig them out, shine them up, put them all back together, and sell them. And now I have 3 or 4 players in Europe that actually have them, which was a surprising change, because for the longest time I was the only guy that had these acoustic electric double necks, and I always have played them with W.A.S.P. And Slash is the only other guy that really has those guitars, and he had Guild build them for him back in the 90s, back in the what were those 2 records? I can't
Use Your Illusion.
Yeah, in the Use Your Illusion era, he had those guitars built for him so he could play those songs. He uses them with the Conspirators. He uses, especially that song Anastasia, he uses the double neck like perfectly. He plays an acoustic lead on it and then switches to electric. So he's the only other guy I've seen that really have been playing those things. And I thought, yeah, nobody's ever going to buy my guitars except for me. But thankfully, I found some cool players that are really hopefully going to take them somewhere else and really do something really cool with them that I wouldn't have thought of. So that's what I did during the lockdown. We had a lot of our young bands in our Rock Academy. They did a lot of festivals, and I've been working with them really hard. They've been recording a lot, and I've mixed sound for them when they play live shows. So we're actually kept quite busy despite most of the indoor stuff being locked down. There's a lot of streaming shows going on. Signal to Noise did like 4 shows, and a lot of the other bands were doing streaming stuff. So it was actually an interesting change in direction, but it gave everybody, it kind of lit a fire under everyone's ass of saying, are you going to sit around and not get anything done, or are you going to try to take advantage of this and get get stuff done? And Blackie wrote a book. A lot of other people wrote books, and there's been a lot of great records made during this shutdown. So it's everybody's kind of done their own thing.
Last question, and I got to tie this together. This is kind of a selfish question, Doug, because I have to admit I'm a huge Kiss fan. I am a huge 80s Kiss fan, so that's kind of where I'm going to go with this, kind of go off kilter a little bit, because I just saw in Vegas in January, Bruce Kulick and Eric Singer at Counts Vamped, a night of Revenge era and 80s Kiss classics. It was just memorable as all hell. And I got to ask you, because Bruce Kulick, I believe, also contributed to the Dreams in the Witch House project, the rock opera based on the 1933 H.P. Lovecraft horror short story. What do you have a favorite 80s Kiss album or song, or are you just all dyed in the wool makeup era, Ace and Peter? What can you give us on 80s Kiss or up to Revenge?
I have to say that I'm a 70s Kiss guy, because by the time we went into the 80s,
fair enough.
Eddie Van Halen, it was George Lynch, Eddie Van Halen, Warren DeMartini. Those guys just grabbed my balls and never let go. And so I loved the Kiss Unmasked stuff, and I think Bruce is one of the best players out there. And of course, Bob played all the best, stuff on the Crimson Idol. So those two have contributed so much to the genre. It's unbelievable. So getting the whole other side of the story was running into a guy named Chris Laney, who had played with Randy Piper in a band called Animal. Running into Chris Laney over in Stockholm and asking him to keep an eye open for any cool projects, quote unquote, and having him come to one of our Wasp shows and say, I found a cool project for you to get involved with. And that was the Dribs and Witch House thing, which is actually based here in LA, but they've used so many Swedish and international musicians on the thing, including Mickey D and a bunch of different players from over in Sweden. That's where I was able to kind of meet Bruce and get to play on some of the songs that he already played on, but also I was able to get him to play acoustic guitar in one of my own solo songs, which was a Christmas song. So it's been really great to meet Bruce. He's such a cool dude. He's such a great player. And it's been great to kind of rub elbows with him a little bit with this project. And I really hope to see him in Grand Funk Railroad. It would be great to get us to a show like you did. So yeah, to answer the question, I mean, Ace, that stuff just hit us when I was like 15 or 16. So it's really it's irreplaceable. The Unmasked stuff, I think, had really great written songs, really wonderfully written songs. And I just need to go on one tangent for a second. I auditioned for Doro Pesh in 1990 and came in second place. I came in second place to some guy who ended up being in the band for about a month, get kicked out. But here's the kicker. The record that I auditioned for that Doro was pushing was the one she wrote with Gene Simmons. And all those songs were awesome. They were great songs. And that was right about the same time that Gene was writing that kind of stuff with Paul and everybody. So it was a great era for Kiss. It was definitely different than the early stuff, but it really was a great era. If I had ended up getting the Doro gig instead of Wasp, that would have been kind of weird. I auditioned with the bass player named Nick Douglas. He's still in the band. Me and Nick stood in line next to each other at the audition in 1990 at SAR Studios in New York City. Me and Nick just happened to be standing next to each other, and we ended up auditioning together. He played bass, I played guitar. The drummer for Steve Stevens, who had alerted me to the audition, he played drums. And me and Nick ended up staying that whole day and playing with a bunch of other drummers and a bunch of other keyboard players. And then I got a call back with Nick about 2 weeks later down to New York, and it was me against one other guy, and they chose the other guy because his hair was down to his waist, and he looked like an Amazon. She wanted a band of American model-looking guys, and I had spiky George Lynch hair. It's just like, nah, he doesn't look right.
Oh, my God. But I bet you look better than all of them now, Doug. You are the man. You are still on the right side of 60, like you mentioned, and things are great, man. I'm so glad you're able to come over to the States and enjoy hopefully some good weather in LA. It's like 70 degrees here in Missouri, man. So, we're doing okay. It has been a true pleasure. I have kept you way too long, but this has been so fun. So I'm just selfishly going to take this and run with it because I've had so much fun. Thank you so much, sir. Enjoy the last bit of your trip here.
Thank you very, very much. And hope to speak with you again soon and meet you when we come to play there.
I got you in St. Louis and Tulsa, right around me here in Kansas City. I will see you here in November. Can't wait to do it, guys. Again, want to make sure that everybody, if our listeners want to be able to keep in touch and with you, you have your official Facebook page, which is like Douglas Blair Official, I believe, is the name of it. And what is the web?
Blair.
Yes. And then
on Facebook, and then I have a site for Signal to Noise, which is just s2nusa.com.
Yes.
That was not so updated, but it always takes on different forms.
Yes, and you can get to the right information. I think that's how I got a hold of you, actually. So, thank you so much, Doug. This is just a pleasure. You're the best. Safe travels, and stay safe, of course, over over in Europe. Yeah, I just, of course, as we mentioned, pray for all this to just sort of come to some sort of peaceful end. That's all we can ever hope for when something like this happens. So thank you so much, my friend, and take her easy, okay?
Thank you very much, sir. I just wanted to say hello to all the fans. And the thing about the dilemma in Europe at this point is both the Russian and the Ukrainian soldiers, these are kids that come see us play when we play our concerts there. So it especially is kind of, really gets under our skin that this is happening. When we play in Moscow, those are some of the best concerts we ever play. They're animals. And St. Petersburg and all through Russia, we have a great time and a great rabid fan base. These are 18-year-old to 25-year-old guys that make up the fan base, especially in Russia. And Ukraine, the same thing. Just a super devoted fan base of animals that love the music. And it's really sad to know that these are the same guys that are out there getting hurt and having to do this shit for political reasons. So I just want to say that, we really hope for the best in that situation. Really hope for the best for Chris Holmes, our compadre, and thanks to all the fans for being patient with the scenario and all the, cancellations and postponements. Can't wait to get out there and get on stage for you.
So well said, my friend. Thank you so much. Take her easy. Stay safe, man. We'll talk soon.
Take care. Thank you.
You bet. Thanks.